So let's get going again. Today's goals. We're going to meet GSLI's team. We're going to learn a little bit about who we are. We're going to do a quick overview of the project, kind of give it a high level perspective. Then we're going to dive in and actually meet the project and talk a little bit about what their needs are. They put together a nice presentation that should actually tell you who they are and what they're looking for in this expansion and relocation. And then we'll go into some Q&As and answer any questions anyone might have that come up during our Prospect Live event. Who's in attendance today? First of all, if you could, I'd like you to pull up the attendance poll. We always like to get an idea of how many of our Prospect Lives you've been able to attend and be with here. And while we're doing that, I'll talk about who we have in attendance. We have community clients. Those are cities and communities that are part of our Elite Cities network that work directly with all of our projects and helping them find their locations. We have some trial communities here today. Those are communities that aren't a part of our Elite Cities network, but are a really important part of our process in terms of helping projects consider various locations. We've also got observing companies and site locators. We always like to share our process with those companies so they can see the power of the transparency in our Prospect Live events and how they can get a lot of information and a lot of work done within our events. And then we've got observing communities. Those are ones that aren't really aligned with the project's needs, but they like to tap in and see what motivating factors are, kind of use it as an educational form of what it means to a prospect, what are they looking for in their locations, and it might help them put together better submissions and more pointed submissions on projects that they're currently working. Some quick housekeeping items. You should already be muted. There is a question and answer button, Q&A button at the bottom. If you have questions, please filter those in. Those will queue in order for us to answer during the live event and allow us to make sure everybody's questions are answered. I might ask you to raise your hand. If so, if it's a difficult question, I'll open up your mic and give you an opportunity to talk directly with our project. And just a quick reminder, we are recording and transcribing. We have a couple people that called me today that can't be here, but they went ahead and registered, and we do automatically send the recordings and transcriptions out after the event. Who's with us today? Myself. I am the CEO of Global Site Location Industries, been around for 27 years and really have enjoyed the process of helping companies and communities meet, all for the goal of job creation. We've got Ashley Kleinsorge. Ashley is our project manager. She is in the trenches day to day, communicating, working with, getting information from the projects. And Kyle is our guest from the project itself, and we'll get to meet Kyle here in just a minute. About GSLI, we are a site location firm for communities and expanding companies. We feel that is our goal, is to bring those two together. We are an exclusive network of member communities from each state. We work together as a team to help get information and help these companies find sites without them having to enlist the services of professional and sometimes expensive site location firms. And then we have our communities, which are considered elite cities, and they get to work with all of our projects. If you're a non-elite member, join us here today. You do get to submit on one of our projects and get to really see how the process works, and that's one time every 12-month period. Currently, this is where we take all submissions. It's called our GSLI project portal. It can be viewed at www.gslиprojectportal.com. All accounts are free to create and activate. That allows you to see all of our projects, and those that will be submitting on Project Body Reconstruction will ask for that to go in here. It's our way to organize the data for the projects. And when we're working, as you can see, 120 active projects right now. that organization is imperative. Just a quick heads up, we are heading out to Modex next week. It's in Atlanta. It's a big 3PL industry. If you're out there, we'd love you to come by and say hi. We are at booth number C4670 under the Global Trade banner, and really want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, who is Artesia Chamber, which resides in New Mexico. We always appreciate our clients and hope they get some tremendous exposure and result at the show. Now we kind of talk about the project. We've got all the housekeeping items done. Ashley, you are, as I said, in the trenches every day. Talk a little bit and give our listeners a little bit insight how we came across the project and how we started to engage and find out the information about them.
Yeah, so when it comes to our lead generation strategy, we really focus on 7 pillars. Those 7 pillars kind of include trade shows, telemarketing, internet research, email nurture campaigns, social media advertising, and our favorite, which is referrals. And that's actually how we got in touch with this project. One of our brokers that we partnered with, he reached out to us and put us in touch with Kyle and his team to assist them with their US operations. And, with them looking in a particular area that GSLI is extremely familiar with, it was a great fit. So we're extremely excited to have them on here with us today. It's always exciting learning about these companies with great projects, and Kyle and his super motivated team have been great to work with, and we're grateful that he gave us his time today to talk more about his project with you all, because we really do think it's a great project that we're excited to bring to the DFW area. So without further ado, I'll give it back to Eric and he can go over a project overview and we can get started.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and so in terms of this project, it is very poignant, and as we'll kind of talk with Kyle in just a moment, there are some future expansion opportunities, so don't feel left out if you're here, but we are on a mission to find Kyle his location first in his targeted area within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But some very good insight on this project in terms of what is in his mind and what they're looking for in their location. They're looking for a 25 to 40,000 square foot facility. The time frame is very targeted and quick. Within 1 to 3 months, they'd like to have a decision on their site. New jobs will be somewhere in the range of 35 to 50. And as I said, very targeted in terms of the interest, a 50-mile radius of the DFW market in Texas. Kyle, why don't we I'm going to turn it over to you. You just let me know whenever I need to flip the slide, but thank you for putting together this presentation, and I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Thank you, Eric and Ashley, for the introduction. I'm very excited to talk about this topic, and very excited that it looks like we've got about 20 folks who have joined to learn more about this opportunity. So we are a global medical device company. We are a leader in women's health. Eric, if you could flip to the next slide. I'll share a little bit about who we are and where we're going. So as I mentioned, we're a global high-tech medical device company. We are a leader in women's health. Fundamentally, we design, develop, manufacture, and market an innovative product portfolio. We entered an established market and captured significant share through innovation and technology. So I think that's one key thing that has driven our company since day one and continues to. We have over 95 patents actually that support our product families. We have 6 product families, over 1,700 SKUs. Those are currently available in over 83 countries, mainly in Europe, but also Latin America and Asia. We are in the process of obtaining regulatory approval for our products, I should say, in the United States to make a major entrance. And this is something that I personally am very excited about. Our whole company is very excited about. It is really the sort of key for driving, the topic that we're talking about today. Our company was founded in 2004, and today we have over 780 employees across 15 countries. And our company is publicly listed on the NASDAQ. We have a valuation of over $1 billion, actually over 1.5 billion. Where we're located today, we have a very global presence across multiple regions. We have multiple manufacturing plants outside of the US, and we are looking for a location in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, really to serve as a hub for our US entity. The focus will be, as you'll see in a bit, we'll have other functions that reside and play a role in this facility as well. A little bit about our management. So our CEO founded the company. He has led the company from its inception to its current expansion as a public company. Our executive management team is a blend of company veterans, folks that have been there, almost from the beginning, and a mix of new hires, primarily in the US, that have a lot of experience with scaling enterprises. So what are we looking for in terms of physical location? We're looking for, as I mentioned, a US headquarters location, call it between 25, maybe 30,000 to 40,000 square foot. 90% of that real estate would be warehouse, about 10% would be office. We're looking at about 50 employees over 5 years. 40% of these would be focused on logistics, logistics management, logistics operators, some logistics analysts, and about 60% would be office employees. So we would have some IT folks, customer care, legal, finance, and some other support functions. Some key things that we're looking for: one would be proximity to major interstate highways and to the airport, an attractive location for the employee mix and visitors, and also a high-grade modern building representative of the brand image. I think one thing to call out here is we are willing to look at, perhaps older buildings that could be renovated and made to be high grade, but ultimately we want this site to be representative of our brand image. So high level on our timeline right now through the end of Q2, so into the summer, we'll be selecting a location. Then from Q2 into Q3, negotiating and finalizing the lease. In parallel, we'll be looking at facility and operational design. Moving into Q3 and then into Q4, we'll be conducting tenant improvements. We'll ramp up staffing and training of that staff to get us ready for either late this year or very early next year operations out of the new site. We would look at low volumes to start in 2023 with a significant volume ramp in 24. All right. Let me know, Eric, when when I should.
Sorry about that. I was on mute.
No worries.
So going into our Q&A, we've already prepared about 10 questions, but as I kind of talked with you a little bit earlier, one of the key things and things that I like to understand, and I think our listeners would like to understand, is that decision-making process in terms of tapping into the mind of a company and saying, how do you really come up with your answers? Could you kind of describe a little bit what you shared with me in terms of how your team has come up with some short list of choices and how you are really going to put together all this information to make a decision?
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit of why we are focusing and targeting the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We did an analysis. Myself, I work in operations. Other folks within our operations team and folks outside of our operations team, and in medical affairs or in our sales groups, we came up with a set of success criteria and critical factors that would make a U.S. operation successful. We looked at things like proximity to where our customer base resides. We looked at ease of access into that location, that metro area, and then ease of access out of. We looked at things like tax regulations, labor availability, business continuity, whether that's from natural disasters or just the ability to sort of withstand, shocks. And through that analysis, we identified Dallas as the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area as the top choice. We circulated that internally. Ultimately, the decision was made by our CEO. I think, as we look at specific sites, that will be something that similarly we look at based on a number of factors, do an analysis, get a sort of cross-functional read on the applicability of these sites for what we're trying to do. Ultimately, the decision will probably be made by our COO.
Okay, I found that really interesting, and I think that's important when our people are trying to get in touch with people at other companies of who to target and who to really talk to find out and really motivate about making decisions. But let's talk about your motivations and the company's motivations for this expansion. Could you dive in a little bit about what are the motivations and kind of tell us about the customers you serve?
Yeah, exactly. So I think our motivations are first and foremost that we see this as a first location for our operations in the United States. As I mentioned, we hope to gain regulatory approval soon, and we would make a major entrance into the U.S. market. So first and foremost, this location will serve as a hub for distribution operations and all of the functions that are required to sell and distribute the product. Our customers tend to be hospitals, clinics, some single doctors or small doctors groups. When you think about the location across the United States of these customers, they tend to be either focused on the West Coast or East Coast, and then I would say there's a column across the middle of the United States from Texas on up to Chicago, kind of overlaid on top of if you were to do a population map of the United States, I would say it somewhat mirrors that map pretty closely.
Okay. So the second question, in terms of key parameters, I think you tapped in a little bit on those, but in terms of must-haves, something that I guess would check somebody off of a site location decision, what are the must-haves of your facility?
Yeah, I think must-haves. One, we need the space. We've done a lot of analysis in terms of how how many units will move, and I think we need probably at least that 25 to call it 35 to 40,000 square feet for our operations. So that's number one. Number two is we need easy access to major highways. Most of this product will probably be moved via truck. Proximity to the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. We will be moving occasionally some units express shipment overnight, either into or out of the DFW area. So proximity to the airport is important. As I mentioned before, we want this to be an attractive location, both to target, hire and retain employees across those functions that I mentioned, but also this location very well could be a location we use to bring visitors in, right, to showcase our U.S. operations, to meet with some of those other functions that I mentioned. So we want this to be an attractive location, suitable for that. And as I mentioned, we want a quality building, something that either today is high quality and has a modern image, or we could have the option to upgrade it to our requirements. Really that would be in line with what I consider our other buildings globally to be sort of at that level.
Okay. And that kind of talks about question number 3. You're talking about close proximity to the highway. Is there any particular need other than distribution? I talked with you a little bit about wanting to brand your company and everything. We worked with another company that was important to them, but that's not of as much of an importance to you, is it?
Correct. It's not. We're not looking to be close to a highway for the ability to put a billboard or anything like that up. It's really so that we can move product quickly. We do operate in an industry where there is very short expectations around time to get the product in the customer's hands. So we would ideally be located within 1 to 2 miles of a major highway or interstate.
In terms of that, diving in a little bit deeper, are there any specific types of equipment or trucks that are moving in and out of the facility, and how many? Do you have any estimates on that?
How many? I mean, it's hard to pin that down. I mean, I would think at least a couple a day. In terms of special trucks, I mean, I think it would be small. If we were, say, serving a customer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it could be a very small delivery truck. but more than likely, it's going to be kind of standard long haul freight carriers, 18-wheeler type trucks.
Okay. So a lot of our communities, they do have some existing assets or buildings that are being built but aren't quite ready, if that makes sense. Would you consider one of those types of buildings, or is the time frame so compressed that kind of eliminates them?
I think we would be willing to evaluate those. We'd obviously need to learn more and understand what the timing is, but I do think that is something we would be, interested in exploring.
On the particular buildings, you want it to be existing. Are you open to? Do you prefer lease, or would you want to purchase the building?
We'd probably preference towards the lease.
Okay, perfect. In terms of the employees, this is always the one that excites me because we're here to help communities create jobs in their communities. What type of employees? I know you went into the kind of titles of those in your presentation. What are some of the skill levels and scale levels of the compensation for those employees?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we can kind of cut them into two buckets. The first is the operations, particularly distribution focused employees. I think, there we would be looking at a warehouse manager or multiple, depending on, the shifts we're running at the time, as well as the various workers that work within the warehouse, as well as some analysts. I think, salaries there for the workers would probably be in the maybe 30 to 45,000 range. Obviously for managers, it could scale up more significantly, particularly depending on on their experience level. In terms of the office employees, there probably will be a pretty big mix, actually. We'll have some legal folks there. We'll have some customer care support specialists there. We'll likely have some IT support there, as well as some finance analysts. And I think, those will range anywhere from maybe 50 to 60,000 on the lower end. And, for the managerial level could be 150,000 plus. So kind of a big range depending on, the actual position that's placed there.
So talking about something I think a lot of our communities are faced with are the challenges of workforce. But from your perspective, have you had any challenges with your labor in some of your other facilities, or what do you caution against when opening and looking for a site when it comes to labor challenges?
Well, I think, this will be our first real significant site in the United States. I can't comment on the labor challenges here in the United States. I think globally we're seeing, a tightness, I'll say, of labor, right? And so, for our groups that are hiring today, there's definitely a need to act quickly, and to act with speed. And I'm not expecting that to change by the time that, we begin staffing up this location. So I think that will be key, that, we have the right partners, particularly 3PLs that we work with, or, support firms that we work with to identify and hire talent. We'll just need to work very closely to operate with speed, but still make sure that we get, the right set of folks.
Okay, great. And you shared this with me, but for our listeners, do these positions come with fully loaded benefits?
They will, yes.
Okay, great. A big question that's always asked in terms of electrical, water, and gas. Are there any special requirements in this facility for any of those utilities?
Well, I'll mention it because, as I mentioned, our operations are global and this is not standard everywhere. But we would expect that this building is climate controlled. Is a climate control, even the warehouse. We would prefer a backup generator. Our other electrical, water, gas requirements would be in line with standards for a hybrid facility for office and distribution. Nothing sort of out of the ordinary in that respect.
Okay. Going back, kind of circling back now that you just said that in terms of distribution, are there any requirements on dock doors? How many dock doors the facility must have?
Yeah, I think, we will need some dock doors. In terms of number, I'm not sure how many. I don't think it'll be, we will not need a building that has, wall to wall with dock doors. I think the building design is still in process. I mean,
Okay.
we'll need some, but it won't be, this isn't a cross-docking station.
Okay. And that's kind of circles back to the first question that we talked about, but sometimes there's a tipping point. Have you guys come across something in your discussions that said, hey, this is the real tipping point? Is it immediate access to the airport, highway? What's a good tipping point if you could put your finger on one thing that would make you choose one location over another?
Yeah, I think ultimately we tend to take a total cost of ownership lens, and we try to take in all factors when looking at total cost of ownership. So I think it'll be a combination of, quality of the facility, ease of access to the transportation network, making sure that it's an attractive location for our employees as well as visitors. I think all of that kind of bundles into the total cost of ownership picture, right? And that combination is really what will be the tipping point. I don't think it's any one factor.
Okay, great. Coming down to our last two questions. Again, if you have any other questions, go ahead and get them in there, guys. I'll be more than glad to do it, but if we've got everything covered, that'll help us stay on time. On number 9, this is kind of a long-term and kind of exciting when I talked with you about that, because I always like seeing the future of what companies are. And you kind of explained how this process will work. But I know you're very focused and pinpoint focused right now in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for Texas. In the future, do you see any further need for facilities and other locations in the United States?
Yeah, I think as we mature in the U.S. market, as we get some experience under our belt, and hopefully grow our distribution and our sales, our distribution network will need to expand. So, whether it expands in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and or other cities in the United States, I think that's still, something that the time will tell. But I think, if our company is as successful as we believe that we can be, at some point we will grow out this building that, I've shared information about. So we would likely need another, either to expand that building or another building in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And, we would be looking probably at satellite sort of areas around the United States as well.
Okay, great. The last question I have on here is, how important are incentives or subsidies to the success of of the project and the timeline, I guess?
Yeah, I think the incentives, this could be a major differentiator, as I mentioned, to that total cost of ownership lens, and how we, calculate favorable return on investment. So I think it's very important. We want to move with speed, so that we can, launch on time within the United States. But we are very in tune with the economics of this project, so it is a very important piece.
Okay, great. I've got one question that came in now, a couple of questions. Would you consider facilities in biomedical corridors? Is that a plus, I guess?
I would say it could be a plus, mainly and I'll describe why. One of the things that we looked at that helped us choose the Dallas-Fort Worth area was the maturity of the 3PL provider network or environment in Dallas is quite high, and that 3PL network gets sort of tighter and stronger as you get to other companies, sort of classic network effects. So I do think that would be a positive. Likely two of those other companies chose to be there for similar reasons that we did. So it definitely could be a plus, something we would be very interested in exploring. Okay.
In terms of, this is kind of, I guess, diving a little more on that, the future, the 4+ year future. How many, could you kind of paint that picture again of how many facilities that would be and what type? I know you mentioned satellite offices. What's that kind of makeup look like? Does that make sense?
I can give it a try. I think I understand. This building that I've talked about here is probably sized for about where we would expect to be in that time frame. Call it 3 to 5 years. Hard to predict the future perfectly. But at some point, we will run out of. Hopefully, we will run out of space at this location. At which point, we would need to look at other facilities. I think in that period from the end of this year until 3 to 5 years. In parallel, we will be exploring, is this model that we will start with this central hub and call it Dallas, and then distributing to our end customers. Does that make sense? Or say, do we have enough customers in the Northeast, or do we have enough customers in the Southeast or the West Coast where it would make sense to set up a hub? It's hard to say how likely those type things are without doing the analysis, and quite frankly, without living it, right? Without getting real world data. But I think our expectation is right now that, some point between now and call it 0 to 5 years, we would be potentially looking at sort of smaller satellite hubs distributed through the United States as well.
Okay. Would those also be in key markets or high population areas? Is that kind of a driving factor?
We would probably use a similar criteria set that we use to select Dallas, but focused on the customer bases where we're trying to target with that market.
Okay. So when we talk about a 50-mile radius, I always like to throw a dart, put that as the center, and then go out 50 miles of that. Is that Dallas? Is it Fort Worth? Is it, or, where would you put that center of that 50-mile radius?
That's a good question. I don't know that we are really in tune with being that, precise with it. I'd say somewhere in between Dallas and Fort Worth and the DFW airport, that sort of, triangle.
Central part. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've already answered the next question in terms of just in terms of the satellite offices, where you might go next. If there aren't any other questions, we can go on to our submission process, but feel free, if you have one, don't be shy, put it in there. The whole purpose of this is to get everybody's questions answered. But here is our submission process. We're going to put up our poll. If you plan on making a submission, we would like you to go ahead and answer yes. That will trigger our team to reach out with you directly and help you start crafting and putting together your submission for this project. Submissions are due April 14th at 5 p.m. GSLI, we will take all of these submissions, and it's very important that you get those submitted in the portal. If you have not done it, it is a very simple process. You'll click make a submission, and it'll walk you through the questions and answers. For those that are elite cities of ours that are making multiple submissions, they know that those traditional answers are saved, so you don't have to repeat the long drawn out process of completing the submission. But that gives us all the necessary data in an organized format to present to Kyle and his team. We will vet those, we will present them to them, and then we will talk about doing actual site location visits. In some of my cases, I actually do what we call a roadshow tour, where we get in a limo and we go from city to city and take a look at the different properties and meet the key people that'll help them make their decision. The recordings, if you need to go back and review some information, those will be put on the portal. They will be live right after we end our session today, and you'll be emailed a copy of it also for your review, just so that you can make as accurate a submission as possible. These are the team members that if you answered yes, you should expect at least a conversation with them and helping you put together an accurate submission. If you haven't yet with us, Amanda Tompkins and Carol Harris. And if you have any questions about any of our projects, you can always reach out to Ashley Kleinsorge. You can screen capture this page, or we will include it in our follow-up emails for you to get in contact with our team. With that said, I know how much time and energy it takes Kyle and his team to work with us and get us the answers we need. We really appreciate the time you put into your presentation to help our listeners understand what your project's all about. And you communities, you are the driving force of what makes our country go, and we always thank you. Your jobs are not ever given enough credit for what you do. to our economy, and we thank you for that. And we thank you for all the help and time and attention you had today to come in and view this prospect live. And with no further ado, if there's no other questions, I want to thank everybody until our next prospect live, and hopefully we'll see you in Atlanta. It's goodbye here from Dallas. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.